This is the Griffin Realty Group Ask-A-Griffin podcast, episode number 43. We start a new series on negotiation during your buying purchase of a property. And the question on the table is, how do you control your emotions during negotiation? Are you a home seller or a home buyer who has questions about selling or buying residential property, but you just can't seem to find an easy way to get your answers? Well, then, hey, you are definitely in the right place. I'm Danny Griffin, the founder of the Griffin Realty Group and the host of the Ask-A-Griffin podcast. Now, to help you take immediate action to get started in the right direction, if you need to sell or buy property right now, or in the very near future, you can get started in a real strategic way by taking advantage of our free step-by-step guides that are waiting for you over at griffincourses.com. All right, let's get started. Negotiation. How do you control your emotions during negotiation? Well, the first point is to simply recognize that purchasing a property is a very large financial and emotional transaction. Now, for some people, that's obvious. They get very stressed out. It's more money than they've ever talked about handling, becoming responsible for, whatever it might be. But then there are people, even at luxury, that don't give this enough thought. Let's just suffice to say we're talking about a luxury purchase and somebody has plenty of money and they're used to handling money. Maybe they're even in the money management business. But what they don't recognize is that not only is this a big financial transaction, it's emotional. When you're buying residential property for personal use in particular, I'm not necessarily talking to the investors at the moment, but I'm talking about somebody who's going to actually use it. First home, secondary home, it doesn't matter. It becomes emotional because the transition from your financial brain into your emotional brain is a big deal. Because you begin to see lifestyle. We talked about that in this purchasing series, the buyer series, where this is your life we're talking about here. And a significant portion of it, let's say you are actively working and let's say you're working in downtown Boston and you have a stressful day every day and you want to go home to that beautiful condo, that apartment that overlooks the Boston Common, the Charles River. We've talked about this. That's emotional because it's the place to escape from. I see down in Beacon Hill all the time, I see people coming and going from the Mass General Hospital. And you can see the stress in their face, especially during the whole pandemic and everything that went on there. You want to go home and relax. So as you're trying to purchase that place, that cave, that escape, you're going to get emotional. So if you're going to get emotional about buying it and what it means, you're going to be emotional throughout the entire process. And that's just life. Just accept it. I mean, I don't know, maybe you have sociopathic tendencies and you don't feel that. But for most people, they feel emotionally charged when going through this process. And it's also a burden for busy people. To go out there and first start online and trying to make sense of all the information, it can be very confusing and it can agitate you. Even though you really want to get it done, you're busy. You're working a lot of hours. You have children. It's just something you don't like to do, period, for whatever reason. All of that gets you in a heightened state of agitation, even though you might be enjoying the process and you might like what you see there. So the first thing is to just recognize that and accept it. I think the minute you say this is going to be, a biggie, it's definitely going to be emotional and I have to pay attention to the money here. I mean, if you have a lot of money, you got it for a certain reason and you want to hang on to it. If you don't have a lot of money and you have great credit and you're making a big financial commitment to a bank, you also are going to get emotional and need to consider the math, correctly and thoroughly. So let's get that off the table and move to the second point. Now that we know it's a large financial and emotional transaction, we've admitted it, the best starting point is to fully understand the whole buyer process and how to best arrive at the negotiation phase or stage. So let me talk about that. When we reference that you can go to griffincourses.com, Griffin courses.com, you're going to get very simple, basic plans from us that do this very thing. They help you fully understand with a quick read or a one-page infographic. They help you understand the entire buyer process as chunked up and simplified by experts like us. We've done this for a long time, and there are phases or stages that you'll go through. We don't need you to understand all the microeconomics and micro details phase by phase unless that's what your interest is in learning that level, but at least to recognize, oh, I get it. The first thing is that I probably should consider getting somebody to represent me in this process and help me sift and sort at least through all the information. Then the next thing is I probably should take that person's advice and get pre-qualified. If I have a very strong banking relationship already, I can get qualified with that banker. If not, I can take the recommendation of the realtor and I can go and get financially qualified. Then that will allow me to match that money up with the third phase, which is the features that I'm going to see mostly online. Oh, I get it. So that kind of money bought this sort of thing. Pretty simple. Then I have to go out there on the weekends, the evenings when I'm not working and tour a few of them to actually see what it's like to look around and say, what kind of lifestyle does this location offer? Do I feel that safety and security and all the other things that are important to me when I'm in these types of properties? And so that when I finally get to the offer writing stage, right, I've arrived there more thoroughly with a greater sense of control and understanding that there I am. I'm in this negotiation stage, right? And so I just arrived there properly. Having gone through all those other 4 stages first, I arrive at a phase. Okay, it's go time. We're about to write this offer based on the math, hopefully, that the realtor has given me. And I understand that, yes, that's a fair price because I've been studying what my money that I've decided to spend in cash or borrow matches up with. And this is reasonable. These features, benefits of living in this type of property, they match what market rate is within a couple of percent. And my life is not worth squabbling over a couple of percent. I like it. I feel good. Write the offer. And so that begins this negotiation phase. So you see, let's contrast that against not being prepared. Let's contrast that against the buyer who thinks that they can just control the process. They come in, they go on their application, they walk around, they walk to an open house and they have zero representation. They've done zero real homework about what the money's really buying. They've had zero guidance from anybody professional. And they just say to the realtor sitting in the open house, I want to make an offer in this. I see there's a lot of people. You see what I'm saying? I'm not saying that doesn't work out for a lot of people. There's some really bright people out there and maybe they did a lot of their own self-homework. But what I'm saying is even to them, slow down. Understand how you're arriving at that moment and understand the real implications of what that negotiation is going to be like, especially if it's a hot market. You don't think it's going to be emotionally charged? But if you are anchored in what you have made a firm decision on that you would really spend and you weren't going to go further and you knew what the money bought and be willing to walk away from something that is not going to be the best deal for you, well, then you're in a good spot during negotiation. And I'm not saying that you become emotionless. That's not the goal here, to teach you to become emotionless, because then you're really almost disconnected from it. And maybe that's more like an investor who's just looking at the math and it works or doesn't. But my thought here is when emotions, if you're not watching me and just listen to the podcast and you can't see me on video, I have my hands on my shoulders. The emotions, my goal is to set them at least there for you. Where they start is typically over your head, meaning you're so emotional, you're not thinking clearly. Understand that? So just from a physical standpoint, put your hands over your head. That's the level of the emotion typically when we go to purchase a property. If we're really excited and if we're really nervous, whatever it might be, and we start to lose our logical thinking brain. And I'm talking about PhDs. I've dealt with really bright people, literally brain surgeons. So I know the quip goes, you don't have to be a rocket scientist or a brain surgeon to do this. I've dealt with brain surgeons who said, man, that was stressful. I have no idea what all you realtors were talking about. You have your own language, literally, quote unquote. So the goal is with anybody at whatever academic level is to try to empower them with the simplest information so that all of a sudden the logical brain can think and it can even hear, right? Sometimes you can't hear, you go deaf when you're so emotional. So you bring those emotions back down to the shoulders. You don't take it out of your heart. You see, that's why I like to do this in a biographical way, where you can see your biography, meaning like your head, biology. I'll be okay, biography. See, I got emotional talking about this. Your biology, okay? We have your brain and we have your heart. So the idea is I can't take the emotion out of your heart during a process with education, and I don't want to. I want you emotionally attached to the property in a positive way. I want you excited about that. I want you to feel that safety, security, and that's the place that you can call home and maybe raise a family right? So, or just live wonderfully with your dog and your fish and your plants, whatever. It doesn't matter to me. That's your call. But if you can't think about it rationally going in, I fret that maybe on the back end of that, you're not really feeling so great about it. That's the whole point for this educational series. We want you feeling good about this. Now, the last phase here of this whole way to keep yourself less emotional is to review your math with your real estate agent in advance. Right? See, when we go in to list a property, one of the most important things in the simple 7 steps to list it is that when we walk through the door after explaining the whole process in its simplicity, answering questions in depth if need be, we say, let's do the math now. Now, this is well in advance of anybody ever committing to list with us. Let's just talk about the math. Here is what has sold in the general range you think your property's worth. Here's how we reconcile the differences between yours and theirs to come up with a reasonable asking price range. Nobody can play pricing it right bingo and come up with a magic price. So we're going to find a reasonable range. And if we take the reasonable ends of those range in a more conservative cheat, right? Meaning we take the lowest end and maybe the middle where it could sell, leave the high end alone as the wonderful home run. And then we take away all the expenses of what you would pay to close your property. We have a net sheet for a seller. So why can't that philosophy come to the buy side? Why don't you know your math? Now, of course, if you're borrowing money, the cost of borrowing that money is up to the bank and is up to the mortgage broker, whomever you're doing business with. And if you're paying cash, you sit down with your financial advisor, and if you do it yourself, what proportion of your cash reserves do you want to spend on your property? So this is just, and when I say math, it's not like this is some complicated algebraic formula. This is very simple math. A minus B equals C, right? And then ongoing, if you're paying a mortgage and the real estate taxes that would accrue to you and your obligation, right? So when you just look at the simple math, there's not going to be this big surprise at the table. When I was first in this business, I think one of the biggest challenges with the runaway mortgage business right prior to the Great Recession was that nobody was sitting with a buyer doing the math, and there were all these hidden fees. And quite frankly, there was some real nefarious practices. It wasn't good. Disclosures were thrown out. No doc loans, quote unquote, existed. It made for a real ugly situation where the consumer was basically, in some cases, flat out being hoodwinked. In other cases, just not being told and waking up with a surprise. Well, wait a minute. I thought that when I bought something at this price, I would be paying this. Yeah, well, you didn't take into account all the points you needed to pay to buy down the loan interest rate. You didn't think about closing costs. I mean, there were all of this stuff that was there that was not disclosed, and all of a sudden people are in over their heads. And you wonder why we have a recession when this business collapsed. Math. Nobody's doing the math. So really be sure to review your math with your real estate agent in advance. And of course, more so your banker. Your real estate agent will guide you to go to your banker, go to your mortgage broker, sit down and do a cost sheet. What's it really going to cost you on a regular basis going forward? That's most important. And of course, what are you going to put down? How much of your cash reserves, if not an all cash transaction, are you going to tie up in this property? And I say tie up. I mean, I'm just going to warn you, when you buy a property, there's no guarantee that the value increases during your ownership. Let me just say that very clearly. Too many buyers are delusional that when you buy residential property, it automatically and every year increases in value. That is a complete delusion. And it doesn't necessarily come back quickly. We've seen recessions where values have gone way down very quickly because the prices were overinflated. They've gone way down, and it has taken more than a decade to recover even to the even spot. So you want to be very careful when you're buying a property that you understand your time frame and the ups and downs of real estate. Now, of course, the best methodology is to constantly take care of your property, improve it, and keep up with all of the at least basic maintenance so you maintain that value. All right, let's go back and review this here. Negotiation is an extremely emotional phase. People freak out when they're negotiating, especially when it's a competitive environment and there are multiple offers. So the podcast here is answering the question, how to control those emotions the best you can during negotiation. The first point was to recognize that purchasing a property is a large financial and emotional transaction, and just accept that. Stop trying to, especially I speak to all of you very, very highly learned folk who have very, very extensive levels of degree, PhD, masters, BAs, BSs. Take it easy, okay? You're human. This is an emotional transaction for everybody because we're talking about home. In the sense of home makes us emotional. Just accept it. It's not a big deal. Second point, fully understand the whole buyer process and how to best arrive at the negotiation phase. That if you go through the process, you can still do it aggressively, but go through it properly. Get representation. Stop acting like a buyer agent isn't anything but a massive asset. Somebody helping you through the process. And it's already built into the multiple listing service that the buyer agent is being offered compensation. So very typically, and in a large majority, I'm going to guess, there's not an upfront fee to do so. So, I mean, I'm not going to knock a buyer agent who charges a fee up front. That just might be their process to protect their time. But I'm saying, for the most part, you can get representation for free to educate you on the process. So you come in more fully prepared. When you're more fully prepared, the emotional level is going down and the logical brain is waking up. So fully understanding that. Next, and lastly, review your math with your real estate agent, your mortgage broker, your banker in advance so that you really know and are disciplined and committed to what portion of cash reserves you're going to spend and what ongoing expenses that you will accrue. From your real estate taxes to your maintenance, understand what you're getting into, okay? Let me summarize it this way. Purchasing a property is one of the single largest financial and emotional transactions that most people make in an entire lifetime. Therefore, it's best to follow a full plan that helps you make the best decision that includes a full and thorough financial understanding of that purchase. All right, now remember, you can take immediate action to get started in the right direction if you need to buy or sell property right now in the near future by getting one of our free step-by-step guides that are waiting for you at griffincourses.com. That's Griffin courses.com. Also, don't forget, you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen so that you don't miss out on any insights each time we upload. We also post all of our episodes on our social media channels. So remember, you can turn on the notifications if you like for Griffin Realty Group and you won't miss the reminders. Griffin Realty Group, nice little triangular logo, little gold guy with wings in the middle. You can find him there, okay? We'd also appreciate it if you would share our content with other people just like you that need some help. We want them to get guidance. They don't have to work with us. We just want them to get the guidance so that this massive financial and emotional transaction goes a little bit smoother and we can leave a good positive footprint out there. Hey, thanks for listening, but remember this, nobody's coming for you. So go get to work on your own plan for buying or selling property, and we will be here every episode to help you do just that. Thanks.